This program is presented through an endowment by the Chicago Baseball Museum, honoring the contributions that Chicago has made to America's favorite pastime.
Whatever I do, what I'm talking to you now, I'm not only talking about Buck O'Neill, I'm talking about every guy that ever played Negro League baseball. That is history. Not only history of the Negro League, that's history of this country. Why we had the Negro League. Segregation. Yeah, we're telling them that story.
When Chicago baseball fans look back on the 2008 season, surely they will remember the exploits of their two major league teams. But there were two Chicago baseball events in July of 2008 which didn't get much media coverage, although they were as important as any game played by the Cubs or the White Sox. One event took place in the scenic, remote village of Cooperstown, New York, the home of the National Baseball Hall of Fame. The other event took place at U.S. Cellular Field on Chicago's South Side, the longtime home of the Chicago White Sox and the ancestral home of Negro League baseball. In Cooperstown, on a humid Friday afternoon, in the Hall of Fame Museum's main wing, a statue was commemorated. The statue was in the likeness of one of baseball's great men and ambassadors, John Jordan Buck O'Neill. It was a posthumous celebration for O'Neill, who had an illustrious career lasting for more than 8 decades, both in the segregated Negro Leagues and in the integrated Major Leagues. Hall of Famers like Joe Morgan, Billy Williams, and Bob Feller were in Cooperstown on that day, there to remember the notable achievements of Buck O'Neill.
Well, it's a great tribute to the legacy of Buck O'Neill because he's an individual who has done a lot for the game of baseball, and I think this is what this statue typifies because he's done so much for the game.
He was an all-star player and manager for the legendary Kansas City Monarchs. He was a scout and coach for the Chicago Cubs, the first black coach in the major leagues. There, he was a teacher and role model for Hall of Famers Ernie Banks, Billy Williams, and Lou Brock. And as an elderly man, he became a national celebrity, starring in the classic Ken Burns documentary Baseball, and providing the inspiration for the creation of a Negro Leagues baseball museum in Kansas City, Missouri. In addition to the statue, Hall of Fame officials introduced a new Lifetime Achievement Award named after O'Neill. He was also the award's first recipient. But the event came after great controversy. O'Neill died in 2006, only a few months after he just missed being voted into the Hall.
I was thrilled and I was very emotional because I wanted to see him in the Hall of Fame. And of course, that didn't work. So this is going to take precedent, I guess.
Earlier in July, U.S. Cellular Field played host to the Double Duty Classic, named after Ted Double Duty Ratcliffe, the sturdy catcher for the Chicago American Giants of the Negro League. This event paid tribute to a legendary annual event on the South Side, the East-West All-Star Game, where the best from the Negro Leagues competed every year at Old Comiskey Park from 1933 to 1960.
It was the Super Bowl. It was the Final Four. It was the Masters. It was the Grand Slam all rolled up into one. It was the biggest event in Black America. It was the event of the year.
Today is a huge event for me, and I know for the panel, to be here to see you young men participate in an event and carry this event on to continue this legacy of greatness, this legacy of community binding, And gentlemen, all I can say is, today when you walk onto that field, remember, there's been 4,500 ball players, black ball players, that have played before you, and you are representing them today when you go out and play this game.
The participants in today's East-West game were some of the best black baseball players from high schools throughout the Midwest. Major League scouts, armed with speed guns, were among the spirited group of fans in the stands. The hope was to reconnect black athletes with America's pastime, baseball, and also to give these young African-American men an education about their predecessors. Those predecessors include Buck O'Neil and his contemporaries, the men who paved the way in the Negro Leagues and during the early days of integration in Major League Baseball. He was born in rural Florida in 1911 and began his baseball career in 1937 with the Memphis Red Sox of the Negro American League. But Buck O'Neil first made his name with the legendary Kansas City Monarchs, where he starred at first base from 1938 through 1946.
Outstanding fielder, good hitter, very good hitter, but more or less line drive type hitter. I wasn't a typical first base hitter, because first baseman, you're looking for that big power. You know, I could hit maybe 20 home runs, but, you know, like Buck Leonard going to hit 40 home runs. See, and those guys, Muse Suttles, going to hit 50 home runs, and those kind of guys.
In addition to making 4 East-West games, he also managed the team from 1948 through 1954. Like many Negro Leaguers, O'Neil competed with and against white major leaguers before 1947, when Jackie Robinson was called up to the Brooklyn Dodgers.
Buck O'Neil was a dear friend of mine. He was a great ball player. He born in 1946, played the doubleheader. We played in Yankee Stadium on a Friday and a Sunday. It drew over 100,000 people. We played in Chicago at Comiskey Park and had 40,000. We couldn't play south of the Mason-Dixon line.
Well, and you know, segregation was a horrible thing, see? But this is why I wrote that book. I was right on time. Had I been earlier, I wouldn't have been, you know what I mean? I wouldn't have played against Babe Ruth, Bobby Feller. I wouldn't have known Josh Gibson, played with Satchel Paige. I wouldn't have known Cool Papa Bell. You understand? I was right on time. And as far as the segregation going to Major League, that didn't bother me that much, because you know what I figured? We were playing the best baseball that was played in this country.
He signed with the Chicago Cubs as a scout in 1955, after his instrumental role in developing future Hall of Famer Ernie Banks, who played shortstop for O'Neil with the Monarchs in 1953.
Oh, man, hey, great hands, and could hit that low pitch. And this is Major League, you know. The Major Leagues, that's what the Major Leagues say. Pitch the ball, keep the ball down, keep the ball down. I said, well, he's going to wear him out in the Major Leagues, and he did.
We're here this morning to celebrate and honor a Chicago hero and a baseball legend, Ernie Banks.
I think today I think Rube, who brought me here to Chicago and taught me so much about life. And Jackie Robinson and Buck O'Neil and Hank Aaron and Billy Williams and all the people who taught me to listen and learn.
Dr. Williams, actually, he was shy. Now, could you believe Ernie Banks was shy? You couldn't, could you? Ernie Banks would sit in the bus, you know, and we'd go someplace. He would sit in the bus. I'd go to the hotel room when he got there and sit in the lobby. But, you know, like the other guys was riding around, I want to go here and see this. I'm going to see this chick over here. That wasn't Ernie Banks. No, quiet, wouldn't say too much. And I think he, after seeing me talk and doing things with different people, and when he got in the Major Leagues, I said, man, you got to open up here. And he started talking, and he hadn't stopped yet.
Buck was out there in the boondocks day and night, scouting players, all the black colleges, and all the coaches knew him, so he had a pipeline primarily. So the Cubs, that was a smart move for the Cubs to sign Buck, but they weren't so smart when they didn't make him manager. Well, we had a good lineup, and Buck primarily was probably the reason, because he had scouted all of us, and he worked with us, and he inspired all of us. We had like Billy Williams and Lou Brock, Ernie Banks, and of course later on he had signed Lee Smith and a few other guys.
All the guys in the Cub organization, but everybody in baseball knew me. You know, all the coaches, all the scouts, all the managers, the general managers, all of them knew me. So it wasn't nothing like a Jackie Robinson thing. I was the first black coach there, but I knew I had worked with all of these guys in spring training, all the guys with the Cubs organization. Jim Enright said, Buck, I know you happy to be in the major leagues. I know you feel proud that you... I said, you know, Jim, it's kind of bittersweet to me. He said, what you mean? I said, it's sweet now. I don't have to drive all over the country stuff. I'm riding the train or the plane. I'm making more money. Something like that. That's the sweet part. I said, but the bitter part for me is, you know, baseball over 75 years old, and I'm the first black coach in Major League Baseball.
O'Neill was also credited with keeping Hall of Famer Billy Williams from leaving baseball. After the young Williams encountered racism in the segregated South during a stint in the minor leagues in the late 1950s.
I was playing in San Antonio, Texas, and I wasn't really, I disliked what was going on, and so far as traveling around, couldn't eat in a restaurant, and those types of things, and I elected to go home. And I went home, and about 3 days after I got home, I looked out in the driveway, and this individual drove up in his Fury, which he all drove, Plymouth Fury, and it was John Buck O'Neill, and he convinced me that I had been making pretty good progress in the game of baseball.
I took Billy out where they had been playing. I took him out there with all of his friends, and they saw Billy. Oh, Billy, we're glad to see you. Man, I would be so glad when I can play in organized baseball like you. I just would like to do that. After the ball game, I took him back to home. He said, I'm ready to go back. I said, okay.
In addition to Lee Smith, Buck also scouted future stars like Oscar Gamble and Joe Carter for the Cubs during the 60s, 70s, and 80s. But after 30 years on the North Side, O'Neill left the Cubs in 1985. Soon he resurfaced as a scout with the Kansas City Royals, where he mentored young players like Jermaine Dye, the future World Series MVP with the White Sox.
Buck O'Neill was a great inspiration to me. I mean, we talked a lot on a daily basis every time he was at the ballpark, and he told me about some of the things he had to go through, and I'm grateful and thankful that I came across guys like him.
He was a member of the Baseball Hall of Fame Veterans Committee from 1981 to 2000 and played an important role in the induction of Negro League players to the Hall. But O'Neill never expressed disappointment when he wasn't elected to the Hall.
1:30, 2 o'clock, the call finally comes in to me. Jeff Idelson from the National Baseball Hall of Fame calls and says, Bob, he didn't get enough votes. And at that instant, I felt as if somebody had kicked me in the gut. And I just sat down, and I could barely maintain the tears. It was such an emotional moment. I said, Buck, we didn't get enough votes. And he was sitting right here at the end of this table, and he says, that's how the cookie crumbles. And then the next word was, how many got in? And I said, 17. And he hits the table in sheer joy. He was genuinely excited that 17 had gotten in. Buck taught us a tremendously valuable lesson that day of how to handle disappointment. And I am certainly one who does believe in divine intervention, because had Buck O'Neill gone in 06 with that class, had it been 18 individuals going in, Buck would have gotten his plaque. We would have celebrated. We would all gotten a chance to high five, stick out our chest and say, hey, that's our man. But then it would have been over with. He would have been just another plaque on the wall with the rest of the Hall of Famers. Well, now his name in baseball runs in perpetuity. You cannot forget Buck O'Neill.
I mean, this is something that's going to be, here long after I'm gone, you're gone, we're all gone. It's still going to be Buck O'Neill. When you have, like I said, you have to go in the hall and look for my plaque to know that Joe Morgan was here. You're not going to have to do that to know that Buck O'Neill had a big footprint here.
Some of O'Neal's fondest memories during his final years were of early black baseball, the kind played by Negro League pioneer Rube Foster. Foster had been a star pitcher and manager for one of the great barnstorming black teams of the early 20th century, the Chicago-based Leland Giants.
Rube Foster was a great pitcher, and Rube Foster was a great teacher. See, Rube Foster helped John McGraw teach his pitching staff. That was Rube Foster as a ball player. And he came into Chicago, and it was outstanding because, well, he organized the Negro League.
In 1920, in this YMCA in Kansas City, Foster convinced 7 other owners to form a league of their own. This became the Negro National League, the first lasting professional league for African American ball players. And Foster's own Chicago American Giants, which he owned and managed, became one of the cornerstone Negro League teams. Foster suffered from mental illness and died too young. He was only 51 when he passed away in 1930. But his influence is unquestionable.
Rube was a great organizer. What we had was the guys that were actually promoting Negro League baseball. They were one making more money than anybody else because they were booking the black ball players all over. And Rube saw that it would be better. Why not the league do it? See? So then Rube started booking. That was the money coming back to the Negro League instead of going to someone else.
The soul of black baseball's storied past in Chicago can be found in cemeteries throughout the Midwest, in places like Burr Oak Cemetery in south suburban Chicago. Dozens of old Negro Leaguers are buried here, along with notable black entertainers from the mid-20th century.
That's the year I was born, 1975.
Many of the gravesites for the old Negro Leaguers had been unmarked. But men like Jeremy Kroc, a doctor from Peoria, Illinois, have been involved with providing gravestones for dozens of old Negro Leaguers.
There are 21 Negro League players that we know of buried here at Chicago Borough. And with the group I'm working with, the Negro Leagues Committee of the Society of American Baseball Research, we've identified 12 unmarked graves of these players, and we've been able to raise funds and have these graves marked over the past 3 years.
Kroc was responsible for supplying gravestones to notable figures like Candy Jim Taylor, the legendary manager for the Chicago American Giants in the 1930s and 40s, and John Donaldson, a great pitcher during the turn of the 20th century who later became a scout for the White Sox.
I'm pretty sure he scouted Ernie Banks for the Sox.
That's correct.
And they passed on him, and he was picked up by the Cubs. And when the White Sox heard of our projects here at Burr Oak, and heard that Mr. Donaldson was buried in an unmarked grave, they donated the money to purchase this marker. I'm proud to be a part of this along with the Negro Leagues Committee because I feel like even though I didn't know these players and didn't know of them when they were playing, they played in anonymity, and I hate for them to be buried in anonymity. I'm glad to be a part of just making sure they're not forgotten for the eternity.
Negro League baseball. All you needed was a couple of sets of uniform, a good bus, and you could have 20 of the best ball players that ever lived. That was Negro League baseball. And another thing, too, in the Major League during that time, maybe 1% of Major League ball players were college men because, Major League wanted them right out of high school, see? But Negro League, 40% of Negro League ball players were college men. Why that happened is Negro League ball clubs always spring trained in a black college town. That's who we played exhibition ball games during spring training. So when these guys, we see somebody we like, when they got through, when school was out, they would come to the Kansas City Monarchs, Chicago American Giants, New York Black Cubans, New York Cubans. That's what they would do.
They were Chicago's other professional team, the Chicago American Giants, organized by Rube Foster in 1911, were proud members of the Negro National and American Leagues. The team won the Negro League World Championships in 1926 and 1927. They played first at Shoreline Park, located at 39th Street and Wentworth Avenue in Chicago. Then moved to Comiskey Park in 1940, where they stayed until the team folded in 1952.
But it was the Comiskey family and John Sherling and others within the Comiskey family that provided the Chicago American Giants with the park, Southside Park. And they collaborated to help build the American Giants and black baseball here in Chicago.
And throughout the team's existence, the American Giants featured some of the all-time great players, from pitcher Rube Foster to shortstop Willie Wells to outfielder Jimmy Crutchfield. Then there was Art Superman Pennington, one of the American Giant stars of the 40s, an outfielder and first baseman who made 2 East-West All-Star Game appearances.
It was great back there with the American Giants. I've never seen so many people, and then going to different towns. Kansas City was one of the best towns we'd go to with Satchel Paige. That would draw the money, you know. American Giants playing the Kansas City Monarchs, that was a big drawing card every time we met. When I come to bat with Satchel, I told him, just like I tell them all, I was young and kind of goofy at the time. I said, throw it in doubt. And Satchel said, come on up, little boy. I was wearing khaki pants then. And he said, come up, little boy. Don't be afraid. Come on up, little boy. And so that sucker struck me out 3 times. He put that big foot, he had at about 14 shoe or 15. He put that big foot up in front of your face. And man, before you get it down, the ball will pass you.
Today, Pennington lives in temporary housing in Marion, Iowa. He was a victim of flooding in Iowa during the summer of 2008. Floods which gutted his Cedar Rapids home and destroyed much of the Negro League memorabilia he had collected over the years.
I enjoy help from the people. They all remember me and they all send me a little money. Little kid sent me $4. Said he didn't get a chance to see me play, but he just sent me the money because my name was Superman. He knew I could play.
The keystone event for the Negro Leagues from the 1930s to the 1960s was the East-West All-Star Game, always held at Comiskey Park. The annual event, held in late summer, would routinely draw 50,000 fans to the south side of Chicago.
The man with the Pittsburgh Crawfords started the East-West Game the same year, 33, same year that the Major League started the East-West Game. We always played it at September, late August or September, and all these people would come to Chicago, the big city, come and do their winter shopping. Come in, guys would come in, have the suits made, women would come to have the dress made, because in New Orleans, if you tried on the dress, they had to buy it. If you tried on the suit, you had to buy it. If you tried on the hat, you had to buy it. But you come to the South Side, you could buy all of these things, and you tried on, you didn't fit you didn't like it, that's all right.
The game was a signature event for Bronzeville, the South Side Chicago neighborhood, which was, and remains, home to thousands of African Americans. It provided a powerful symbol of how self-sustaining the black community was during the 30s and 40s, when the evils of segregation forced African Americans to look within their own neighborhoods for goods and services.
We owned so many things then that we don't own now. See, we stayed at the Vincent Hotel. Man on the Vincent Hotel was black. Everything was in there was black. This was, the South Side was outstanding, man.
So it had a big impact across the country. Southern Illinois Railroad brought in people from Illinois and the Deep South. You had people on the Santa Fe coming in from Kansas City, the Grand Central out of New York. So you had people from all over the country coming in to this city to celebrate the biggest event in Black America. And by the 1940s, as we entered World War II, this event outdrew the Major League White All-Star Game. And I think the owners, Major League owners, saw that fans, both black and white, wanted to see a more creative type of game, more up-tempo type baseball. a game where you could score without getting a hit. You know, I mean, Negro Leaguers were more creative. They would, you know, walk to get on base, steal second, go to third base on a sacrifice bunt, and come home on a suicide steal or a sacrifice fly. And so fans across America wanted to see the black brand of baseball. It was more up-tempo.
In addition to being a showcase for immortal Negro Leaguers like Josh Gibson and Cool Papa Bell, the East-West game also introduced fans to future stars. One of those future stars was outfielder Minnie Minoso, who represented the New York Cubans in the 1947 East-West game. Only a few years later, Minoso would become the first black player with the Chicago White Sox and would almost immediately become a fan favorite. He still is a favorite on the South Side today.
Baseball, that would be very, very, very good to me. I love you. God bless you, America.
The tribute to the East-West game, held at U.S. Cellular Field in 2008, only drew a few hundred fans. But it was a successful event, giving the public opportunity to see possible future African-American baseball stars. Before the game, historians and players talked about how important it is for African-Americans to maintain a connection with baseball.
I think the real deal now is baseball is now taking some interest in going to inner cities, looking for the market, because the players are there.
Today's game addressed a different issue, bringing back African Americans to the game of baseball. In 1974, almost 30 years after Jackie Robinson broke the Major League color barrier, African Americans represented 27% of all Major League Baseball players. Today, only 8% of Major Leaguers are black.
You get more basketball and football scholarships than baseball scholarships, so there's more incentive to play. Plus, when Jackie and Hank Aaron and Willie Mays, their group came along, all these talented ball players that now play football, basketball, or baseball could only play baseball.
White Sox great Harold Baines talked about how he was influenced by Larry Doby, the first black player in the American League in 1947, and the second black manager hired in the majors, with the White Sox in 1978.
He took me along as his kid. I mean, I was an adult, but he brought me in. He taught me the ropes of the way I should act as a professional, the way I should treat other people, and he taught me how to play the game.
And White Sox general manager Kenny Williams, one of only 2 black general managers now in the major leagues and a former player himself with the Sox in the late 80s, talked about his Negro League connections.
My grandfather could not, he played in the Negro Leagues in Louisiana. He could not even envision, couldn't hope and dream to be a major league player in the white major leagues. These men couldn't do that until Jackie came along and then made it possible.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big hand to both of these the West All-Stars.
These young men are following in the footsteps of Ernie Banks and Billy Williams and Lou Brock and Minnie Minoso and Art Superman Pennington and Buck O'Neill, playing baseball and maintaining traditions in Chicago's African-American community.
See, like people say, well, I know you mad because you didn't get a chance to play Major League Baseball. Not me. That didn't bother me that much. What bothered me was more or less I couldn't attend Sarasota High School. I couldn't matriculate at the University of Florida, although my father owned property, was paying taxes just like everybody else. That's the thing that hurt me. It didn't hurt me because I didn't play Major League Baseball, because I played the best baseball was playing in this country.